Imagine having everything: talent, fame, money, and still losing it all in one night. This is the story of a boy who danced before he could speak, a voice that reminded the world of Michael Jackson, and a superstar who was destined to be untouchable. But something went wrong. Before the fame, there was pain. Before the success, there was chaos. A childhood filled with fear, violence, and silence. And maybe that's where the story really begins. At just 16, he became a global sensation. Hit songs, sold-out shows, millions of fans screaming his name. He wasn't just famous, he was unstoppable. Until one night changed everything. One incident, one mistake, one moment that the world would never forget. Headlines exploded. Fans turned into critics. The industry went silent. Was he finished? Or was this just the beginning of a different story? Because while the world judged him, he kept creating. He kept fighting. He refused to disappear. But here's the question no one wants to answer. Can a person truly change? Or do some mistakes follow you forever? This is not just a story about fame. This is a story about talent versus controversy, success versus self-destruction, and the price of being human in a world that never forgets. Stay till the end, because this story doesn't end the way you think. He was born in a small town where dreams rarely made it out, but from the very beginning, Chris Brown was different. Music wasn't just something he liked, it was something he lived. As a child, he would imitate legends like Michael Jackson, copying every move, every step, every emotion. But behind that talent was a reality most people never saw. His home life was unstable, marked by fear and conflict, experiences that silently shaped the person he would become. While other kids were playing, he was learning how to escape, not physically, but emotionally, through music and dance. When he was discovered as a teenager, it felt like destiny had finally arrived. His debut single exploded, and suddenly, the world had a new star. Fame came fast, faster than anyone could control. Interviews, tours, screaming fans, it was everything he had dreamed of, but also everything he wasn't prepared for. At just 16, he was no longer just a kid. He was a brand, a product, an icon in the making. The industry praised him, comparing him to legends, calling him the future of music. And for a moment, it truly seemed like nothing could go wrong. But fame doesn't come with instructions. The pressure to be perfect, the constant attention, and the expectations began to build. Every move was watched. Every mistake was magnified. And then came the moment that would change everything, the incident that turned admiration into criticism overnight. The headlines didn't just report what happened, they defined him. The world didn't see a young man struggling, they saw a villain. His career didn't just slow down, it collapsed under the weight of public judgment. Silence followed. The same industry that once celebrated him now distanced itself. Fans were divided. Some defended him, others walked away. It was a fall not just from fame, but from identity. Who is he now, without the applause? Without the image that had been built around him? But instead of disappearing, he did something unexpected. He kept going. He returned to the studio, not as the untouchable star he once was, but as someone trying to rebuild. His music changed. It became more raw, more emotional, more honest. You could hear the conflict in his voice, the struggle between who he was and who he wanted to be. Years passed, and while the controversy never fully disappeared, neither did he. He adapted. He evolved. He remained relevant in an industry that often forgets quickly. New artists came and went, but he stayed. Not at the same peak, but still present, still creating, still performing. And that's what makes his story so complicated, because it's not a simple rise and fall. It's a constant battle between talent and controversy, between past and present, between public judgment and personal growth. Some people will always see his mistakes first. Others will focus on his talent. And maybe both are true, because in the end, this isn't just about a celebrity. It's about something deeper. It's about whether a person can ever truly move forward when the world refuses to let them forget where they've been. The stage lights are blinding, the crowd is screaming, and in that moment, it looks like everything is perfect. But perfection is often just a performance. Behind the energy, behind the flawless dance moves, behind the voice that once reminded the world of Michael Jackson, there is a story that feels much darker than the spotlight ever shows. Before the fame, before the money, before the world started watching his every move, Chris Brown was just a kid growing up in an environment where fear was normal. Violence wasn't something distant, it was something he witnessed. And when a child grows up around that kind of energy, it doesn't just disappear. It becomes part of them, quietly shaping how they react, how they feel, how they deal with anger, pressure, and pain. The world would later judge his actions, but very few would stop to ask where those reactions were rooted. When success came, it didn't come slowly, it exploded. One moment he was unknown, and the next, he was everywhere. Fame at a young age can feel like a dream, but it can also feel like losing control. Imagine being a teenager and suddenly becoming a global figure, where every word you say, every move you make, is watched, judged, and recorded forever. There's no room to grow privately, no space to make mistakes quietly. Every flaw becomes public. Every weakness becomes a headline. And then came the moment that would define everything. The incident involving Rihanna wasn't just news. It was a turning point that split his life into two parts, before and after. Overnight, admiration turned into outrage. Support turned into criticism. The same world that once celebrated him now questioned him, condemned him, and in many ways, rejected him. It wasn't just a scandal. It was a complete shift in identity. He wasn't just an artist anymore. He became a symbol of controversy. But what makes this story even darker is what followed. Because losing everything publicly doesn't just damage your career, it damages your sense of self. And for someone already carrying unresolved pain, that kind of fall can be overwhelming. There were moments where it felt like he was spiraling, caught between anger and regret, between defiance and guilt. Legal issues, emotional outbursts, public incidents, each one adding another layer to the narrative the world had already built about him. And the world didn't let up. Social media became a constant reminder. Every mistake replayed, every action analyzed. In the past, celebrities could escape criticism with time. But in this era, nothing disappears. It lives online, forever accessible, forever discussed. And that kind of pressure can either break a person or force them to evolve. What's unsettling about Chris Brown's story is that it never fully settles. There is no clear redemption arc, no simple ending where everything is forgiven and forgotten. Instead, there is something more realistic, a constant tension between who he was, who he is, and who he's trying to become. Because despite everything, he never disappeared. He kept making music, kept performing, kept finding ways to stay relevant in an industry that usually replaces people quickly. And that's where the story becomes complicated. Because talent doesn't vanish, but neither do mistakes. There are fans who still admire his artistry, who separate the music from the person. And there are others who believe that some actions are too serious to ever move past. And both perspectives exist at the same time, creating a divide that never fully closes. Maybe the most uncomfortable truth is this: people want clear answers. They want heroes or villains. But real life doesn't work that way. Human beings are messy, contradictory, capable of both brilliance and failure. And in many ways, his story forces us to confront that reality. Because it's easy to judge from a distance. It's easy to label someone based on their worst moment. But it's much harder to understand how those moments are created. This isn't about excusing actions. It's about understanding consequences. And maybe that's why this story stays relevant. Not because it's perfect, but because it isn't. Not because it's inspiring in a traditional way, but because it feels real. A constant battle between light and darkness, between talent and controversy, between the person the world sees and the person behind it. And in the end, maybe the real question isn't whether he changed. Maybe the real question is, do we allow people to change? Or do we decide who they are forever?